Okay, so this is Why People Who Believe in God Fear Death by Scott Hill, and this is forthcoming. Well, it's actually out in analysis now, I believe, or forthcoming. As always, feel free to ask questions along the way. My first time reading it, and if you stick around to the end, we get to rate it using emotes. You get to spam some emotes, and and tell me how you feel about the paper. So let me know, and here we go. Introduction. Some philosophers and social scientists think that most people who claim to believe in God do not really believe in God. Up in here. Exactly, Frank. One especially prominent variant of this suggests that people who claim to believe in God are afraid of death, and they grieve when someone they love dies. If they believe in God, they would not experience such emotions or exhibit such behaviors. Yeah, this is the old... I was talking to my buddy at work about this. He was like, if you believe in God, then kids who die you think are back with God. So why don't religious people just kill all their kids so that they can be immediately sent back to God? Oh no, he had a different argument. I was telling him, oh yeah, his argument is known. People do this. Why would you be sad about a dead kid? The dead kid's now with God. They're in heaven because, they're free from sin because they're a kid. So it's like, why would you not kill kids? You go to hell, but all the kids go directly to heaven. So it's like, there's these like weird arguments like that. As always, I am not advocating killing kids. Okay. So if you were sad that someone died, then you do not believe in God because, why would you? They'd be happy they're in heaven. As Ray puts it, quote, contrast the reactions in two situations. In the first, the wife has to be sent off to a luxurious convalescent hospital for care for 2 years before the husband can come and join her. In the second, the wife is about to die and the husband has been told he will follow in 2 years. If in the second case there really were the genuine belief in the heavenly afterlife that, let us suppose, they both avow, why shouldn't the husband feel glad, as in the first case indeed, even gladder, given the prospect of eternal bliss? However, I bet he'd grieve and mourn the loss like anyone else. Yep. Vipers is pro stuff. As Van Leeuwen puts it, quote, factual beliefs more generally stay operative in guiding behavior across settings. Religious credences, however, aren't like this. Religious attitudes about the afterlife, for example, tend to become inoperative outside religious settings. This partly explains why there are so few willing martyrs. It also helps explain the observation that religious people facing death are as fearful as atheists or more so. Their credence in the afterlife is not operative in all settings and does not eliminate the factual belief that death is final. It's green. Author shows that the hypothesis that people who report believing in God actually do believe in God is able to explain these observations. Okay. First explanation, fitness-enhancing fear. Assume for the sake of argument that if God exists, there is nothing to fear about death and nothing to grieve at the passing of a loved one. Even so, there is an evolutionary story about someone who believes in God would nevertheless fear death and grieve. Our ancient ancestors found themselves in environments in which fearing death increased their fitness. Organisms that greatly feared death in such environments survived long enough to reproduce at a greater rate than organisms that did not. Make the fear of death deep and immovable and primal, and you will get greater fitness for that organism. Make the fear of death easy to pry loose, and you get reduced fitness. In light of this, a human produced through evolution will have a primal, difficult to remove fear of death. Even if one intellectually recognizes that what happens after death will be good, one will still be afraid of death. One might reply that this explains why it is difficult to remove the fear of death, but one might insist fear of death nevertheless rules out belief that what happens after death will be good. The two mental states cannot be present together. If indeed evolution has built us in such a way that we are unable to pry loose the fear of death, then it has also built us so that we are unable to believe that God has good things in store for us after we die. One can't really believe that what happens after death is good if one is afraid of death in this way. Author does not think that this reply is successful. There are many examples in which deep-seated fears like this coexist with the belief that there is really nothing to fear. Yeah, I mean, you can be like, flying is not particularly dangerous compared to like riding in a car, but people are still very afraid of flying, and they know this. They're not like irrational about the statistics about flying in cars. So Consider a famous case introduced by Tamar Gendler. She discusses a transparent walkway that extends out of the western rim in the Grand Canyon over a vast empty space with jagged rocks below. People who visit the site report knowing it is safe, but they also experience fear. Many refuse to go out onto the middle of the walkway and instead cling to its edges. A few especially brave people are able to overcome the fear and go out into the middle and are rewarded with a t-shirt. Gendler's diagnosis of the case is that people really believe that they say what they believe. They know that the walkway is safe, but they are nevertheless afraid. This is also why Daniel Dennett's diagnosis of the case. Discussing Gendler's example, Dennett and his co-author Ryan McKay state, quote, "A person who trembles or worse when standing on the glass-floored skywalk that protrudes over the Grand Canyon does not believe she is in danger any more than a moviegoer at a horror film does, but her behavior at the time indicates that she is in a belief-like state that has considerable behavioral impact." So I want to draw together two ideas to explain why people who believe in God might fear death. First, there is an evolutionary story. The ancient ancestors of such people were in environments in which a primal and difficult to remove fear of death enhanced their fitness. Second, there are cases such as Gendler's skywalk case, in which primal and difficult to remove fears coexist with the genuine belief that there is nothing to fear. Together, these ideas are sufficient to explain why people who genuinely believe in God fear death. They use the term a-leaf for this. Yeah, that's right, Chocolate. I think that's used. So yeah, the a-leaf is not something you're actively believing in, but it's something like you know about. Frank says, it's interesting that they assert that the person on the walkway isn't afraid. Splitting hairs there, yeah. Well, they believe they are safe, rather. Yeah, that's, I mean, again, what Mint said is that, like, there's different ways to describe it, to be more specific about how people are believing what they believe. Because, just a straight belief, well, they are afraid and they know they're not going to die, but then those two things seem to be incompatible. But, like, yeah. But, it's easy enough to understand. Like, everyone's correct here. Okay. Regarding grief. Grief itself is maladaptive. Really? Is it? I mean, according to whom? Why do we do grief so much if it's really maladaptive? Like, you'd think that we would have gotten rid of grief at this point if it wasn't maladaptive. That's weird. Okay, so I'm not sure about that line right there. Okay, continuing. But the mechanisms that cause grief enhance fitness. Okay, so the mechanisms of grief are good, but the grief itself is bad? Is that like saying, well, the fever kills the viruses, but also is bad for you? I mean, kind of. They believe that they are in danger. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Young children and animals do not have the concept of death, but they experience grief as a result of even brief periods of separation from those with whom they are attached. They display two reactions to such separation. First, they display increased activity, calling, proximity seeking, and distress. Second, they display depressed reactions and withdrawal. This is observed in young children and young animals that are briefly separated from their parents and caregivers. It is also observed in adult animals when they are briefly separated from their mates or from their peer groups. And also from your cell phones. They did this with cell phones. They would put cell phones on the table just out of people's reach, and people start freaking out. So if they see it and it's like too far and they're not allowed to get their cell phone, people start freaking out. Great. Like heightened awareness, like nervousness starts happening. It is speculated that grief in reactions to separation consists of two processes with distinct causes. The active process in which the organism engages in proximity seeking and suffers distress is caused by an alarm reaction to the loss of a significant individual. This mechanism increases fitness by raising the probability of reunion with a significant individual. But it lowers fitness when the significant individual is dead because there will be no reunion and its resources that could be spent elsewhere. I'm already not liking this because if someone dies, there are dangerous shit that might be around, especially back in the day. Now, even now, if someone's dead, that may indicate danger. Granted, someone can die at the end of their life and it may be no danger, of course, but, death comes with it disease and rotting and whatever. So bad parts of the body that you don't want to deal with. And so I don't think that there's there's some process that, changes your behavior around death is not inherently bad. Like, I think this is a little bit simplistic, but, not necessarily wrong, but a little weird. The passive process in which the organism suffers depression is distinct and caused by deprivation of stimuli, which provides behavioral and physiological regulating derived from the lost relationship. Yeah, see, I think this is a Just So story. I mean, they have a reference here. So we'd have to look this up, this reference here, say chapters 2 and 4 and chapter 9 of this. Why is this? Wow, this one is really fucking bright. But like, I'm not sure that this is so clear. Frank says, I imagine grief has social benefit of demonstrating what an avid ally you are. Yeah, good point. Other benefits of like social benefits that come with someone dying, and then virtue signaling, if you will, properties to show that, like, look how loyal I am. Loyalty matters, and grieving for someone publicly shows an aspect of loyalty that, other people might respect. So yeah. Okay, but like, yeah, so I'm not entirely buying their Just So story here. You'd have to look up this reference here. I can't even, other color, I have to futz with my colors because it's just bright. This mechanism increases fitness by providing behavioral and physiological regulation, but it is maladaptive when a loved one dies because the organism undergoes withdrawal from the relevant stimuli. Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I ain't sure here. Frank says, or it might be rubber banding from the relationships being so strong you can take lots of valuable shortcuts, and the break is therefore more ruinous. Yeah, and so, I mean, when you get ruined, so they're talking loosely here in this paper, and this is a good point. I was thinking about this myself. How depressed are we actually talking about someone when they die? So there's grief, and then there's severe depression that goes beyond what we might consider mere grief. And so if you were really relying on someone in your life and then you lost them, well, that might be a big problem because, you can't continue in the way that you were, and you have to rebuild those sorts of relationships with the community and the world. And so that might be something else going on. So again, that is more stuff that is not being explained in this paper. Point this way. So yeah. So that's another good point, Frank. Okay. Does that matter? I don't know, because they're going to talk about the mechanisms responsible for grief now. So the mechanisms responsible for grief themselves enhance overall fitness by facilitating the maintenance of relationships, but when lasting separation is unavoidable, as in the case of death, the result is maladaptive. Maybe. And maybe Frank gave a good reason, socially adaptive. The active phase is spent seeking reunion when such a reunion is not possible, and the passive phase results in withdrawal of stimuli that causes depression. Humans inherited these mechanisms from their earlier human and non-human ancestors, and so they experience grief when separated from a loved one. I wonder if this author, lost somebody and sort of wrote this paper as a response. That sort of thing has happened. I've mentioned it before. I read a paper and I was like, man, this guy is angry. He is really pissed. This is an angry person. And I used to email all the authors, and the author wrote back saying, yeah, I was. But I thought writing a philosophy paper was a better use of that energy than, taking revenge. He was like, I was very angry. And then I was like, okay. I was like, I don't know if I responded, but I'm like, good on you for directing your, energies at something useful. Okay. So I just wonder if this paper is kind of a response to something that happened in this person's life. So, Hill's life. Scott Hill's? Yeah. In light of all of this, the explanation of why people who believe in God grieve is this. Grief is caused by separation. Animals and young children grieve even though they do not have the concept of death, and even when there is a mere brief separation. Adult humans who have separated from one another grieve. Mere separation is sufficient for grief. It need not be caused by the object of one's attachment no longer existing. It requires only that one is significantly separated from the object of one's attachment. You see, and this is part of the strategy in this paper. They don't need the bullshit that we were kind of complaining about. They're just saying, look, the mechanism that causes grief is good enough for this. Once it's just the separation that's causing it. Frank says, I think there's a reprise of the evolutionary argument. Yeah, they're still, that's right, I think. They're still in some sense responding to it. They're saying the evolutionary benefits of the mechanisms of grief are what allow us to grieve even in the face of belief in an afterlife. Yeah. So like right here, this is, so there's part 2? No, okay. All right, mere separation will set off the alarm that yields the active phase of grief. Yeah, second part starts here. I'm here. Mere separation will set off the alarm that yields the active phase of grief, and mere separation results in the withdrawal from the stimuli provided by the object of one's attachment that regulates the behavior and emotions. This causes the passive and depressive phase. Death, whether permanent or not, is a separation from the object of one's attachment. It sets off the alarm, initiating the active phase of grief, and it deprives one of stimuli, which then initiates the passive phase of grief. I appreciate you being here, Frank. Second explanation, fear of low probability possibilities. Imagine you just rolled a 20-sided die and the outcome is hidden from you for 2 days. After the 2-day period is up and the result of the roll is revealed to you, one of 3 things will happen. If you rolled any of 3 to 20, you will go to paradise. If you rolled a 1, you will go to hell. And if you rolled a 2, you will cease to exist. Given all of this, you have a credence of 0.9 that you will be in paradise in 2 days. Nevertheless, it is psychologically plausible that you will experience fear and unease. Now imagine your friend is spending time with you as you await the outcome. Your friend says, I don't understand why you're so nervous. You claim to have a credence of 0.9 that you will go to paradise. You should be excited. You must not really have a credence of 0.9. You reply, look, the stakes are so high and the outcome of hell is so momentous. There are low probability outcomes of the roll that are really bad for me. They likely won't happen, but their probabilities are not so low that I can just ignore them. Maybe I'm risk averse in such a way that the salient possibilities for me are bad ones, even if I see that those possibilities have a low probability of obtaining. But I'm going to be somewhat anxious, and those possibilities will be on my mind until I am on the other side of paradise. Quist asks, there are many religions, their religions are associated with lower grief. This paper seems vague. Fair. I mean, this is definitely in the sort of like Judeo-Christian Western tradition. Yeah, and there is a sociological or anthropological question of, are there peoples out there that don't grieve or act very differently towards death? And that's like a very important, like, you know, counterexample to this sort of scheme that is going on here. But like, yeah, so this may be very Western centric. And that's a good point. Perhaps some people who are confident that God exists find themselves in a position similar to the one you find yourself in the dice case above. They feel that it is very likely that God has something good in store for us after we die, but there are enough people who have darkly pessimistic views about what happens after death that they can't dismiss such a possibility as much as they would like. And there are enough people who think that you cease to exist after death that they can't dismiss that either. So they find themselves with some anxiety when facing death. Some people might have the sort of psychology that fixates on low probability bad outcomes. And even though they have high credence that they will be in paradise, the low probability bad outcomes are sometimes salient to them. They won't always be and completely at ease until and if they are on the other side of paradise. Again, this is knowing philosophers, this might be just a nervous person, and they're saying, hey, I'm a great person, but I can't rule out that one time I did something stupid and God's going to take it out on me. You know, there's a lot of dumb reasons in the Bible, like wearing 2 different kinds of cloth in a shirt or something, and it's like, you're not supposed to do that. Maybe you go to hell for wearing multiple kinds of cloth, like, 2 different, like both cotton and like rayon at the same time. You're going to hell for that. So something like that, like you don't really understand the religious like reasons for what makes you go to heaven or hell. It's like, yeah, nervous people. Laughing says Kings, 2 Kings 23 to 24. From there, Elisha went up to Bethel, and he was walking along the road. Some boys came out of the town and jeered at him. "Get out of here, Baldy," they said. "Get out of here, Baldy." He turned around, looked at them, and called down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. Then two bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is the sort of shit like that happens in the Bible. Maybe we misinterpreted some stuff and we're all going to hell for some dumb shit reason. Could happen. And so maybe you're a little worried that, even though you think you're a good person, that you didn't really understand the religious doctrine. And that can happen. Okay, compare. Imagine you were forced to play Russian roulette. You thanked someone. I thanked Redacted for this example, so as a reviewer one. It's funny. Christians can call all the bears, exactly. Imagine you are forced to play Russian roulette. If you fire and there is a bullet, you will violently die. But if there is no bullet, you will get $1 million. It would, so we've got also Squid Games and stuff. It would still be very scary. As you load the single chamber of the gun and then roll the cylinder, it would be natural for you to be afraid. It would be very strange for someone to say to you, "What are you so stressed out about? You're about to become a millionaire." It is normal and natural for people to fear events that they judge to have low probability, even if they have a high credence that a much better outcome will obtain. Human psychology is complicated enough that there are many different emotional reactions we can have to a single probability distribution. Chappelle makes a singular point in her paper about this topic. Oh, okay. Didn't see the parentheses. It's not simply a matter of the person thinks this outcome is unlikely, therefore the person is not worried about it. Yeah, and this is a version of like Pascal's wager, where one outcome greatly outweighs the others. So the chance of going to hell really scares people because of how bad hell likely is in their minds. So even though you have infinite heaven, the chance of hell is just very, 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 very scary. So even though there's a small percentage of that can dominate your thinking of it. I mean, that makes some sense. Stockton says, people forget there are so many different biblical translations that we've lost intended meanings of the Bible. We don't know what the authors intended. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot goes into what people believe and stuff. So that there is any doubt about, whether you're going to go to heaven or not makes sense. Viper says, Pascal's wager can be easily flipped, though. Exactly. But that's exactly the point in the article, though, is that you think that you're going to go to heaven. Like you should, and that will completely outweigh it. But you're also afraid of like this small likelihood. What if you waste the one life you have trying to appease a hallucination? Yeah, but that's the whole point here, is that people think they're going to be fine, but then they're worried about the low probability stuff because that's just how people are. They're worried about it. Stockton says, we speculate, but we have no certainty. Yeah. Quiz says, Pascal's wager also assumes Christianity is the right religion. Yeah, but I mean, that's the same thing here. As you brought up earlier. Like, you were assuming this sort of scheme where we have this heaven and hell, and it makes this sort of sense where you can, like, know what God wants for you, or did you do it? So, I mean, we are in this sort of Christian tradition. Yeah, because, I mean, there's no real hell. There's a sort of a afterlife in Judaism, but if I recall correctly, it's mentioned something like 7 times in all of the Jewish Bible, and only in passing. So there's not really a whole lot of information about it. It's more like the old Greek sort of afterlife. It's not a proper heaven or hell. Third explanation, what we lose when someone dies. Again, as chat has been saying, on the traditional Christian view, it is unclear exactly how things will work in the afterlife and what experiences we have there. After death, according to Christians, we are radically transformed. So again, now they're just explicitly just referencing the Christian tradition, because the other stuff might appeal to like the Judeo-Christian Islam tradition or nearby other theories. Now we're just doing Christian. All right, going back, let me spell out why this is relevant. Going back to Ray's example of the young couple, to make the example analogous to the traditional Christian view, he would have to make it so that the couple is no longer married when his wife must leave for the luxurious resort, and the former husband would have to have only the vaguest understanding of what will happen to her there and how she will be transformed before he sees her again. I think it makes sense for him to be sad and anxious in the case that even if he can be confident that what happens to his wife will be good, the relationship they had is gone. His ex-wife will be radically transformed when he sees her again. Even if the relationship they had is replaced by something much better, it is understandable that he would be sad and feel that there has been a loss. Frank says, in the afterlife, you can be headed for the serious strife. Now you make the scene all day, but tomorrow there'll be hell to pay. Exactly. So yeah, and so now we're saying, well, what if the afterlife, even if it's very good, isn't what we thought it was? And so you don't even need to be Christian for this argument to work. But like, yeah, there's radical transformation in the Christian tradition, according to the article. I don't know. But you could say, look, maybe it isn't actually the Christian God, but we're going to trust that, being a good Christian is good enough for most religions, but the afterlife may not be what the Christian religion said it was. So it'll be radically different. Okay. So whatever we thought we were going to get, we're not going to get that. That's a possibility too. Another disanalogy is that most real-life cases, when one young spouse dies, the other does not follow a mere 2 years after. If the spouses are in their 20s, the remaining spouse may expect to have 50 years or more left. If I learned that I would be separated from my wife for 50 years because she was going to a luxurious resort and the life I thought we would build together is gone, I would be upset. If the young couple has children, this will be compounded. I would think that I was part of a team that was raising these children. Now, the other member of the team is at a luxurious resort for 50 years and is cut off from our children as they grow up and develop and become adults. That would be upsetting. The separation involved in death is significant. Consider a couple that is getting divorced. A divorcee might feel that the divorce is net benefit for each member of the couple, but she may nevertheless mourn the loss of her marriage. It would be weird to say to someone, look, there's no way you really think getting divorced was the overall better option. After all, your primary emotion is grief at the divorce. If you really thought it was the overall better, your primary emotion would be joy. End quote. We might recognize that one option is net better, but we might nevertheless feel more sadness than joy. Indeed, one reaction to the divorce she might have, even if she thinks is a net positive, is to hold a mourning ceremony. Yeah, you're mourning the life you were hoping to have and now it's gone, and you might be happier out of a bad relationship, but that don't mean that the dream's dead, basically, and you have to move on, and so you're going to be sad about that. Author says, my father died recently. Yep, this felt like something happened here. It's like this person wrote a paper about it. My father died recently, says the author. My dad died not too long ago, speaking of anyway, 2022. Some of the things that made me sad seemed to be immediate and visceral and independent of any metaphysical or religious views I might hold. When I was with his body shortly before he died, I could touch him and talk to him and engage with him. When I was with his body after he died, just seconds later, he was gone. I felt like I touched his former body, but I couldn't touch him. I remember the moment he died and I saw his body was completely different. His body at the moment was still warm, but otherwise it seemed radically changed. I remember touching his body later when it was cold after he had been preserved, and it was radically different still. I felt this way. My dad was here, now he is not. I don't know how things will be when I see him again, and I felt deeply sad. Something about that, just on a primal level, hurt me. It didn't matter if he was now in a better place or that I would one day see him again. What mattered in that moment is that my precious father and I were separated, and such separation seemed deeply wrong and evil in a way that was independent of what might happen in the future. Yeah, the dream is dead. You had a life with your father. The idea of that's gone. That sucks. The idea that mere separation is sufficient for grief is substantially anticipated by Nikolaus Wolterstorff in Lament for a Son. Apologize for how I say your names. As he says, as he puts it, quote, elements of the gospel which I had always thought would console did not. I did not think of death as a bottomless pit. I did not grieve as one who has no hope. Yet Eric is gone here and now. He is gone. Now I cannot talk to him. Now I cannot see him. Now I cannot hug him. Now I cannot hear of his plans for the future. That is my sorrow. For that grief, what consolation can there be other than having him back? Nothing fills the void of his absence. End quote. This matches the phenomenology I had surrounding my father's death. Okay. The death of strangers. So far, I've been discussing why we regard our own deaths and the deaths of loved ones as bad. It remains for me to explain why we regard the deaths of distant strangers with whom we are not biologically or socially connected as bad. I have space here only for an evolutionary explanation. Frank, you called it. I must leave the theological explanation for another occasion. My explanation is... I'm losing it. My explanation is this. Natural selection sometimes results in organisms that have the disposition to increase the fitness of genetically distant organisms. What? Natural selection sometimes results in organisms that have the disposition to increase the fitness of genetically distant organisms. So I have the result that I could make someone in India more genetically fit. Okay. In humans, that disposition partly includes the belief that death is generally bad and bad for genetically distant humans. Furthermore, the disposition, including the belief that death is bad, are present in humans even in cases in which that disposition is not triggerable, such as situations in which a genetically distant human is also geographically distant. Oh, genetically distant. So it's just like, someone I'm not related to at all. Let me spell that out in more detail. Natural selection sometimes results in organisms that have disposition to increase the fitness of other organisms to which they are largely unrelated. Yeah, so I can help somebody, a rando out on the street. Easy. This occurs in social insects, fish, humans, and other species. In some cases, an organism will even have this disposition with respect to organisms of different species. Yeah, so this is just saying the social matters. So like I can help the social group even if they're not genetically related to me. So like we can each all help humanity in general. So a little bit of altruism. Dawkins discusses cases in which fish of various different species have a reciprocal relationship. A large fish will refrain from eating a much smaller fish. Instead, the larger fish will go into a trance. The smaller fish will then groom the larger fish. The smaller fish gets some food and is protected from the larger fish that would otherwise eat it. The larger fish gets groomed. There are some smaller fish that are cheats. This is a weird angle, though. Yes, very, very weird. They mimic the other small fish that actually groom, but instead of grooming the larger fish, they take a bite out of the larger fish and leave. The mimics are in the minority, however. Dawkins' explanation is that there are three categories of organism when it comes to reciprocal altruism. Suckers give help whether the help is reciprocated or not. Cheats receive help when they can, but never give help in return. Grudgers are disposed to give help unless they think the other organism needing help is a cheat. Dawkins observes that in computer models, if there are only suckers and cheats, the entire population declines and often goes extinct. But if there are grudgers too, eventually the grudgers will dominate and the suckers and cheats will go extinct. Dawkins maintains that this applies to humans, but he is unsure about the exact details. Sober and Wilson argue that in humans, the disposition to increase the fitness of organisms to which one is unrelated may also arise because group selection favors norms that lower the cost and fitness of that behavior or even make the relevant behavior egoistic from an evolutionary perspective. Like the Jedi and midichlorians, exactly, Vipers. They help you when they feel like it. Yeah, this is a really weird take. It's like, okay, look, this is a long-winded thing to say. Look, you can help out species and they help you back. Like, just be symbiotic about it. And then you can feel bad because if, like, everyone is being helpful, then death is bad because you have fewer people to help. The cheats are not going extinct, says Quist. Yeah, well, that's part of the problem. That was a computer model. You're basically, if you do sophisticated modeling, there's been other philosophy on this. If there is a general good, like you're helping other people, there's always going to be a free rider problem. People who take more than they give back. And that is a general problem in economics and a bunch of other things where there's goods for the group and people abuse the group goods. So if like there's a communal field that everyone gets to like farm a little bit and take some, there'll be people who take more than they should, and it's hard to get rid of because it's just the nature of having communal stuff that's good for everybody. So yeah, in a simplified model, they go extinct. In more sophisticated ones, you have this problem always. I forget what's the term. Because it's an issue with insurance. So like insurance, everyone pays in insurance. And the idea is that if you get in an accident, then you get, made whole again. But everyone pays a little bit so that, the few people who get into accidents get repaired. Of course, there are insurance cheats that take advantage of the system. I mean, and this is like, people always are trying to figure out how to tamp down on the insurance cheats, but still keep car insurance. So, like, yeah, if you can figure out a solution to this, believe me, you'll be an instant millionaire. The insurance companies will give you the money because they spend so much money dealing with insurance cheats. Okay, another aspect of my story is that the relevant disposition is partly grounded in the belief that generally death is bad for humans. For example, if I see a drowning stranger and I think his death is bad, I am likely to help. On the other hand, if I were to instead think that his death is good, I am less likely to help. I might even take measures to ensure that he dies. Indeed, if I think death of strangers are good, I might even start trying to kill people who are not otherwise in danger. This would not increase a stranger's fitness. Vipers hates people who don't contribute, and he takes that back. So, on the present explanation, humans evolved the belief that death is generally bad for humans, even unrelated humans. Yeah. All you had to say, author, is that we're social things, and that, like, we live in a society. No one lives by ourselves. I mean, there are the few oddballs who live off in the woods, but it's rare. It really is. We live in cities and stuff nowadays. So it's like, the general idea of death is bad because we all gotta live together. In some cases, an unrelated human is far away and I have no relevant causal contact with them. I cannot help them. My judgment that their death is bad is inert. Yeah, it's like, am I worried about some random dude who died in India? Because, you know, I'm sure some random dude dies in India every day. It's a big place. Not really. I'm not concerned about that. But, you know, I don't like people dying in general, but like one dude over there. And this is also kind of my, I live right outside New York City. It's like a lot of people die here every day, and like people like lose their mind. Like, you know, someone gets shot. I'm like, so it's like a lot of people. I don't like people getting shot, but don't lose your mind about it. It happens nowadays. Okay, but evolution yields the disposition to help others to whom we are unrelated, even if there are circumstances in which that disposition cannot be triggered. Compare. I imagine I am separated from all of my biological and socially close loved ones. They are far away and I have no relevant causal contact with them. If they are in danger, I cannot help them. I will nevertheless judge their deaths to be bad. And this is because natural selection results in organisms that are disposed to increase the fitness of their kin. And that disposition remains even if it is not triggerable because my kin are too far away for me to help. In the same way, natural selection results in a disposition to increase the fitness of humans who are not in our kin. Part of that disposition includes the belief that the deaths of biologically distant strangers is bad. And that disposition remains even if those strangers are distant and even if there is nothing I can do to help them. This explains why the judgment that a distant stranger's death is bad would be resilient even if one knows that the stranger will enjoy a good afterlife. Quiz says, do you care if some random dude in India doesn't care if someone here dies? No, not at all. Why would I care? Like, people are having great lives, I'm sure, in India. They are having fantastic lives. Some of them are very old and they're going to die. That happens everywhere. Like, I hope they have a great death. Like, I'm not feeling bad about it at all. There's also nothing I can do about that. I hope they love their life. They have a wonderful family. They're surrounded by family and everyone's like super happy. They're like, man, I'm like excited about the next journey. It's like, and if I hope they feel the same way about me, but it's like, they're like, okay, they're going to die. No big deal. It's like, fine by me. It's like, it's not like we solved death yet. So, not like that's a choice that was forced upon them. Everyone's going to die. It's like, no big deal. So it's like, yeah, I know I'm a little bit of an oddball in some of these opinions, but it's like, you're going to die. You had a great life. It's like, am I feeling bad about someone who had a great life and it's like they're at the end of it? It's like, no, it sounds fine. It sounds normal. Maybe not fine. Just call it normal. Traditional and lay theology. Returning to my discussion of traditional Christian theology. Return to my discussion of traditional Christian theology. Maybe that if one accepts the traditional view, one's stance towards death cannot be explained by the hypothesis that one believes in God. But some lay Christians are uninformed about the traditional Christian views surrounding death. Some think that they know in detail how the afterlife works, and they anticipate reunion with their loved ones while giving little, if any, thought to the radical transformations that occur after death. One might wonder how I can explain this observation. Note that I do not need every one of my explanations to apply to every believer. It is enough for my purposes that 2 of the 3 explanations apply in the case of uninformed Christians. I grant that insofar as the relevant Christians have detailed beliefs about the afterlife, and insofar they can anticipate reunion with their loved ones in such a way that there is no radical transformation, one of my explanations does not apply. Nevertheless, such uninformed Christians are still the products of evolution, and they will have been crafted in such a way that their fear of death is resilient. Furthermore, they may fear what they regard as low probability possibilities in which their detailed speculations are false. Thus, my evolutionary explanation and my explanation from fear of low probability possibilities applies. And that's it. Okay. Now we get to review. This is the emote review. If you're still here in chat, thank you for sticking this one out. I mean, I thought it was fun, but I don't know how you felt about it. If you thought this was fun, gave you some ideas, give it a brain dance. Fun ideas make the brain dance. If you thought it had existential artistic drama, Nog Scream. Give it a little scream face. Nog Ouroboros for deep ancient ideas. Nog Knife, slicing, dicing arguments. Nog Navel, navel gazing only for academics. Nog Turd, all style, no substance, still poop underneath. And Nog Grapes for big claim that shrivel up. You can also use the global yay, vote yay and vote nay for from Twitch, and my vote meh. Note that all the emotes in the green do make an overall score go up because I calculate an overall score. The ones in the red make it go down. The vote meh actually makes it goes to the mill. Frank says, vote meh. Nothing wrong with it, just seems very low-hanging fruit. I can imagine people berating Christians for being sad when their family dies, but I've never seen it happen in person. Maybe it's mean Christians berating other sad Christians. Yeah. Oh, I'm late. Can you start over? Yeah, we explained all of philosophy of mathematics earlier. Then I did some Christian theology now. Good stream. What's up, Ra? I hope you're having a good day. Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Frank. In some sense, this also might merit a turd. They came up with a problem that may not even be a real problem, and then they solved it. It's well, sure, but does anyone actually believe this? I really feel like this paper, and because they were talking about their dad's death and a few other things, it feels like a response paper to something that happened in their life. So it's yeah, maybe it is just mean people there. So Chocolate gave an Ouroboros, thank you. So it's it's maybe this is not the most significant stuff, but not the worst either. Quist gave it a Nog Navel. Cool. Yeah, I mean, maybe the navel is more fair. It's people who care about these sort of minor things. Voss says, you made decent day chores and some unexpected catch-ups with the buddy. Cool. Yeah, that's not bad. Not bad. What do I think? Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle here. It's I'm also feeling sort of, if you're interested in this, it's not bad. So I'm gonna vote. Well, let's go Nog Navel. I'm kind of there too. It's there's nothing special here. I'm not hating on the paper. It's not great either. I'll give it a brain. Well, do I even think this was fun? Not even sure. But we'll go there and I'll think about it. Yeah. So, Rog, just to sum up real fast, this paper says, look. If there is a happy afterlife in your religion, why are you so sad when someone dies? Aren't they happy with God now? And they're saying, look, you don't do the religious thing. You do some evolutionary arguments why we feel bad about people leaving our lives is you're evolutionarily sad. You're missing someone that, you were happy to live with. And then, then they were also saying a few other minor arguments. They're not too bad. Got distracted by the end and wasn't really paying attention, so meh. Yeah, it really feels kind of meh. I mean, it's not a big deal. And so it's it's Sock don't give it a knife. That's fair too. That's actually a good point. I'm gonna give it a Nog Knife as well. So I gave a navel gazing knife. It's a very split paper for me. It's nothing super significant. Not too terrible either. Had some ideas in it. It's okay. Yeah, it's like I said, I'm gonna Nog turd it, but I'm just gonna give all the fucking things today. Brain dance, all the fucking things. So it's yeah, it gave some arguments, some fun things, but it didn't really. It was just kind of silly at times. So yeah. All right. If anyone else wants to get their review in, now's the time. 60 seconds left. And then I will go drop you off somewhere else.